Initial call to action. Before we dive into this touching story about new beginnings and dignity, I invite you to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss our upcoming narratives that will warm your heart. Now, sit back and get ready to meet Reed Holloway, a man who is about to take control of his own life. The sound of silverware scraping against fine china was the only thing breaking the oppressive silence in the Holloway dining room. Reed watched his son Adrian meticulously cut into his filet mignon, while his daughter-in-law Veronica poured wine into crystal glasses with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Little Lily, his 11-year-old granddaughter, cast nervous glances between the adults, as if sensing the storm that was about to unfold. "Dad, this Cabernet is special. I brought it from the winery we visited last month," Adrian said, filling Reed's glass to the brim. Reed noticed the look his son and daughter-in-law exchanged, that silent communication they had developed over the years. 5 years, to be exact. 5 years since Evelyn, his wife of 40 years, passed away, leaving a void that no house, no matter how full of people, could fill. "It's delicious," Reed replied, taking a small sip, even though he preferred his usual beer. At 65, small concessions like this had become part of his routine since moving into his son's house in San Diego. "Grandpa, can I show you my science project after dinner?" Lily asked, her brown eyes shining with excitement. Before Reed could respond, Veronica interjected. "Not tonight, Lily. We have an important matter to discuss with Grandpa." The calculated tone in Veronica's voice made Reed sit up straighter in his chair. In recent months, he had noticed the barely concealed irritation on their faces whenever he entered the kitchen during their work video calls, or the audible sighs when he left the remote control in the wrong place. "This sounds serious," Reed remarked, placing his linen napkin over his lap. Adrian cleared his throat, a habit he had since childhood whenever he was nervous. "Dad, we've been thinking a lot about your situation." "My situation?" Reed raised a graying eyebrow. Veronica smiled, that perfectly rehearsed smile she used on difficult clients at her real estate agency. "Reed, you know how much we care about your well-being, especially after that little accident in the bathroom last month." Reed felt heat rise in his neck. The little accident had only been a slip on the bathroom rug, with no consequences beyond a bruised ego. But since then, he had noticed how Adrian and Veronica spoke louder to him, as if his hearing had suddenly failed. "We found a wonderful place," Adrian continued, pulling a sleek leather folder from the chair beside him. "It's called Sunny Hills. It's a high-end community for seniors." Reed felt something cold settle in his stomach. "A nursing home?" "A retirement community," Veronica quickly corrected, "with full medical assistance, recreational activities, and peers your age to socialize with." Reed watched as they avoided his gaze, sliding glossy brochures across the table. Photos of smiling seniors playing golf and doing crafts flashed before his eyes. "We've already filled out the preliminary paperwork," Adrian said, his voice now professional, the same one he used with his clients as a tax consultant. "Your pension will cover most of it, and we'll help with the rest." "My pension?" Reed's voice came out louder than he intended, causing Lily to shrink in her chair. It was then that Veronica dropped the mask of kindness, her eyes hardening like stones. "Reed, let's be direct. This is your last dinner here. You're moving to a nursing home." The silence that followed was absolute. Reed looked at his son, hoping for some sign of discomfort, some indication that Veronica's words shocked him as much as they did Reed. But Adrian simply nodded, confirming every cutting syllable. In that moment, Reed saw with crystal clarity what he had become in his own family: a burden, an inconvenience, a problem to be solved. The $300,000 he had given Adrian from the sale of his house, supposedly to expand their home and create a more comfortable space for everyone, had never been used for that purpose. Instead, it paid off the mortgage, financed the brand new Audi Veronica drove, and a series of luxuries the family couldn't afford without his contribution. Reed felt the weight of Lily's gaze on him, her big eyes filled with confusion and fear. With a deep sigh, he carefully folded his napkin and set it beside his practically untouched plate. "I understand," he finally said, his calm voice contrasting with the storm inside him. "And when would this move be?" "The room will be ready on Monday," Veronica replied, her tone suggesting the discussion was over. "We've already hired a company to help with the transition. They'll be here at 8 in the morning." Reed nodded slowly as his mind raced toward the plan he had been secretly cultivating for the past few months, a plan none of them could imagine. "Well, it seems you've thought of everything," he said, forcing a smile. "Now, Lily, how about you show me that science project? After all, this is our last night together in this house." When the house finally fell silent and the lights were turned off, Reed sat in the darkness of his room. It wasn't really his room. It was Adrian's old office, converted into an improvised space with a single bed and a dresser that didn't match anything in the house. His personal belongings had been reduced over the years, every Christmas and birthday when Veronica subtly suggested he let go of a few more memories. Reed turned on his tablet, the glow of the screen illuminating his aged face. With a few taps, he opened his email and found the message he had been waiting for. Oliver, his longtime friend and real estate agent, had sent the confirmation. "All set for tomorrow. The keys will be waiting as we agreed." A genuine smile spread across Reed's lips for the first time that day. The bungalow in Ocean Beach, that little seaside paradise he and Evelyn had always dreamed of for their retirement, was now officially his. The $180,000 he had discreetly saved from the sale of his previous home, coupled with his retirement savings as a tax consultant, totaled $220,000. Enough money to buy his little piece of heaven and still have a comfortable reserve. For the past 6 months, while Veronica and Adrian believed he was attending computer classes at the local library, classes he actually did attend, by the way, Reed had also been meeting with Oliver to visit homes, sign documents, and plan his quiet escape. "It's not an escape," he murmured to himself as he opened the drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. "It's a declaration of independence." Reed spread a few photographs across the bed. The bungalow was modest: 2 bedrooms, a cozy living room with an ocean view, a small kitchen, and a backyard garden where he could grow the herbs Evelyn loved so much. It wasn't big, but it was his, a place where no one would look at him as a problem to solve. Carefully, Reed took out 2 sheets of paper from his folder. For weeks he had drafted and revised these letters. The first was addressed to Adrian and Veronica. "Dear son and daughter-in-law, by the time you read this letter, I will have left for my new home. No, not Sunny Hills, but a place I have chosen for myself. Were you surprised to learn that I saved part of the money from the sale of my house? Probably as surprised as I was to discover that the $300,000 I gave you was never used for the promised expansion. I'm not writing this with bitterness, but with clarity. The last 5 years have taught me that I must take the reins of my own life, even at this age. You have your lives and priorities, and now I understand I need to have mine. My new address is on the back of this letter. My door will always be open to Lily and to you should you wish to visit an old man who has chosen not to be a burden. With love, despite everything, Reed." The second letter was for Lily, kept in a sealed envelope with instructions to be delivered when she turned 16. "My dear granddaughter, when you read these words, you will be almost an adult, probably much taller and certainly even smarter. I want you to know that my sudden departure from your parents' house had nothing to do with you. You were the light of my days there. Sometimes in life, we have to make difficult decisions to preserve our dignity and happiness. Never allow anyone to define your worth or determine your path. You are strong and brilliant, just like your grandmother Evelyn was. The money accompanying this letter is for your education, so you can pursue your dreams without limitations. Use it wisely, as I know you will. Always remember, True wealth lies in living authentically without excuses or regrets. With all my love, Grandpa Reed. Along with the letter for Lily was a certificate of deposit for $50,000, which Reed had set aside specifically for his granddaughter's educational future. Looking at the digital clock that read 2:15 in the morning, Reed quietly began to gather his belongings. Just the essentials, some clothes, photographs, the watch his father had given him, favorite books, and important documents. Everything fit into 2 medium-sized suitcases, as most of the bungalow's furniture had been purchased and delivered over the past few weeks. As he organized his things, Reed looked out the window at the starry San Diego sky. Tomorrow, before the sun even rises, he would begin his new chapter. A serene smile lit up his face as he whispered to the portrait of Evelyn that he always kept on his nightstand, "You were right, my love. It's never too late to start over." 4:30 in the morning. The sky was still a dark canvas dotted with stars when Reed finished loading his suitcases into the taxi waiting silently on the curb. The driver, a middle-aged man named Miguel, had been recommended by Oliver specifically for his discretion. "To Ocean Beach, sir?" Miguel asked quietly. Reed nodded, casting one last look at the imposing house where he had lived for the past 5 years. The lights remained off, the curtains drawn. No one had noticed his movement, exactly as he had planned. With light steps, Reed returned to the front door. On the entryway table, he placed the 2 letters. The first, addressed to Adrian and Veronica, was prominently displayed. The second, for Lily, was partially hidden beneath a small ceramic vase that his granddaughter had made at school. Adrian would know where to find it when the time came. For a moment, Reed hesitated, his fingers brushing against the doorknob. A flood of memories rushed through his mind. Adrian's first toothless smile, the nights he read stories to him, the proud handshake on his graduation day. How had they gotten to this point? At what moment had his son become a stranger, more concerned with appearances and status than with the well-being of his own father? The soft sound of the taxi's engine brought Reed back to reality. It wasn't the time for lamentations or second doubts. It was time to leave. "Goodbye," he murmured, closing the door quietly. The taxi glided down the tree-lined suburban street where mansions stood like silent sentinels. As they drove away, Reed felt the weight on his shoulders gradually lift, as if each additional mile was freeing him from invisible chains. "It's the first time I'm going to Ocean Beach this early," Miguel remarked, breaking the silence. "Are you going to catch the sunrise at the beach?" Reed smiled. "Yes, the first of many, I hope." The trip took just over 20 minutes. The sky began to turn shades of pink and orange when they arrived at the quiet street where the bungalow was located. Unlike Adrian's ostentatious neighborhood, Ocean Beach had an unpretentious charm, with colorful houses and laid-back gardens. "This is it," Reed said, pointing to a small light blue house with white accents and a little porch. Miguel helped unload the bags and place them on the porch. "Are you sure you don't need help getting in, sir? It's still dark." Reed shook his head. "Thanks. But I'll be fine. Oliver left the keys under that vase over there." After the taxi left, Reed stood for a few moments just contemplating his new home. The sound of the waves crashing on the beach just 2 blocks away created a natural symphony that calmed his heart. It was just as he and Evelyn had envisioned during those long conversations about, "One day when we retire." Bending down carefully, Reed picked up the key hidden under the vase decorated with seashells, a personal touch that had surely been Oliver's idea, knowing his taste for meaningful details. The door opened with a soft creak. The interior was exactly as it had been in the photographs, but better. The morning light began to filter through the large windows, illuminating the simple yet comfortable furniture he had chosen. On the coffee table sat a vase of fresh flowers and a handwritten card. "Welcome to your new beginning, Oliver." Reed left the bags in the hallway and walked slowly around the house, touching the walls, opening cabinets, feeling the wooden floor beneath his feet.
In the kitchen, he found a basic basket with bread, fruits, coffee, and other essentials, another thoughtful gesture from his friend. The master bedroom had a large window facing east, allowing the first rays of morning sun to light up the space. Reed placed the portrait of Evelyn on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm here, my love," he whispered to the photograph. "It took a while, but I'm finally here, our dream by the sea." His eyes caught movement through the window, a seagull gliding in the increasingly clear sky. It was a new day, a new beginning. With renewed energy, Reed unpacked his clothes, organized his books on the small shelf in the living room, and brewed a strong cup of coffee. Then, donning a light sweater, he stepped out onto the porch and settled into the rocking chair, watching the sunrise complete its journey above the horizon. 65 years, he thought to himself, a perfect age to start anew. 3 weeks passed since Reed's quiet departure. Ocean Beach turned out to be exactly the refuge he had hoped for. A neighborhood where people waved to each other as they passed on the streets, where local shopkeepers quickly learned the names of new residents, and where the rhythm of life followed the ebb and flow of the tides. That Tuesday morning, Reed walked along the cobblestone sidewalk of the main avenue, carrying a small shopping bag from the local market. The October sun shone generously, warming his face and highlighting the gray hair he had decided to let grow a bit longer. A small rebellion against the neat cuts Veronica always insisted he maintain. "Good morning, Reed," called a melodic voice from across the street. It was Eleanor, or Ellie, as she preferred to be called, the owner of the cafe Waves and Aromas, located halfway between Reed's bungalow and the beach. At 57, a widow for a decade, preserved the original language of the text and a smile that seemed to light up her entire face. "Good morning, Ellie," Reed replied, crossing the street to join her. "Perfect day, isn't it?" "Absolutely perfect for our beach walk," she smiled, adjusting the colorful scarf that held back her brown hair with silver streaks. "You're still on for 10 o'clock?" Reed nodded. For the past 15 days, he had joined the small morning walking group organized by Ellie. Besides her, the group included Martha, a 72-year-old retired teacher with the energy of someone decades younger, George, a 68-year-old former sailor full of sea stories, and Frank, a 70-year-old retired lawyer with a sharp sense of humor and an impressive memory. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Reed assured her. "I just need to drop these groceries off at home and I'll be there." Ellie glanced at the bag. "I see you're becoming quite the chef. Are those fresh herbs in there?" Reed laughed. "I'm trying. I bought a Mediterranean cookbook and decided it was time to learn something new. Evelyn was always the talented cook in the family." "I'm sure she would be proud to see you venturing into the kitchen," Ellie said gently. She never showed discomfort when Reed mentioned his late wife, a quality he deeply appreciated. "I've also started preparing the backyard garden to plant some herbs," Reed added. Basil and sage were always her favorites. "Well, you picked the perfect place for gardening. This climate is a blessing for plants. Speaking of which," Ellie opened her bag and pulled out a small pot. "I brought you a rosemary plant. They say it symbolizes remembrance and friendship." Reed accepted the gift, genuinely touched by the gesture. That was how it was in Ocean Beach. Small acts of kindness happened naturally, without expectations or ulterior motives. "Thank you, Ellie. I'll plant it in a special spot." They temporarily parted ways, and Reed continued his way home, his step lighter than it had been in years. As he turned the corner onto his street, he noticed a car parked in front of his bungalow, a black Audi he would recognize anywhere. His heart raced. The moment he knew what eventually come was here, sooner than he expected. Adrian was sitting on the porch steps, his posture rigid, eyes fixed on the ground. When he heard Reed's footsteps approaching, he looked up. His normally composed face showed clear signs of exhaustion and something else. Hurt, perhaps? "Dad," he said, standing up. "Adrian," Reed replied calmly. "Found the place without difficulty, I see." "Oliver gave me the address after I insisted quite a bit,"
Adrian explained, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. You look good." Reed unlocked the door and gestured for his son to enter. "I'm fine, very well, actually." The interior of the house had transformed since Reed's first morning there. Small personal touches were everywhere. Books on the shelves, a colorful throw over the couch, framed photographs, including several of Lily, and potted plants on the windowsills. "Care for some coffee or something stronger?" Reed offered, placing the groceries on the kitchen counter. "Coffee is fine," Adrian replied, his eyes scanning every detail of the space. "It's cozy here." "It's my home now," Reed simply said, starting to prepare the coffee. "The ocean view is spectacular, especially at sunset. Your mom would have loved it." The mention of Evelyn seemed to break something in Adrian's composure. He sank into one of the kitchen chairs, rubbing his face with his hands. "Why, Dad? Why didn't you tell us about this place? Why did you leave like that?" Reed took a deep breath, measuring his words. "Do you really need to ask? This is your last dinner. You're moving to a nursing home. Were those not the exact words?" "Veronica shouldn't have said it that way," Adrian admitted. "But we were worried about you." "Worried about me or about my pension?" Reed asked, his voice calm but firm. "Let's be honest now, son. You needed my money, not my presence." Adrian opened his mouth to protest, but then closed it again. After a long moment, he spoke quietly. "Things aren't good for us financially. I made some bad investments. Veronica's business is struggling with the unstable real estate market. He hesitated, we're close to losing the house." Reed placed 2 cups of coffee on the table and sat across from his son. "Why didn't you ever tell me about this? I could have helped without needing to be deceived or treated like an invalid." "Pride, I suppose," Adrian murmured, "and shame. You've always been so competent with money. I wanted to prove I could be successful like you." "At the cost of your integrity?" Reed asked, with no accusation in his voice, only sadness. "At the cost of our relationship?" The silence that followed was heavy, laden with years of faulty communication and unspoken expectations. "Lily misses you," Adrian finally said. "She cries every night. She thinks you left because of her." Reed's heart ached. "You know that's not true. I made it clear in the letter." "Yeah, the letter." Adrian managed a sad smile. "Pretty straightforward, as always was your style." Reed studied his son's face, the boy he had raised, the man he had become. So much of Evelyn was in him, the same eyes, the same stubborn chin. Despite everything, this was his only son. "Adrian, I can't go back to your house," Reed said firmly, "but I'm willing to help financially for 6 months, with some conditions." Adrian's eyes widened. "Conditions?" "First, be honest with Veronica about how much you lost in your investments. Second, create a realistic financial plan together, maybe with professional help. And third, Lily can visit me regularly." Adrian seemed to process the words slowly, as if testing Reed's sincerity. "Why would you do that after the way we treated you?" "Because I'm still your father, and because I believe everyone deserves a second chance to do what's right." 6 months passed quickly. Winter gave way to spring, transforming Reed's small herb garden into a lush oasis. As agreed, he had helped Adrian and Veronica financially, allowing them to reorganize their finances and avoid losing the house. Lily visited her grandfather regularly on weekends, rekindling the special bond they had always shared. On that April afternoon, Reed was sitting on his porch, reading a book on astronomy, a new interest he had developed during the clear nights in Ocean Beach. The stargazing club, led by George, had become one of his favorite activities on Friday nights. The strident sound of the doorbell startled him. He wasn't expecting visitors. Ellie had mentioned something about a craft fair in the neighboring town, and the other friends had their own commitments that day. When he opened the door, Reed found Lily standing there, her school backpack on her back, her eyes red from crying. "Lily," he exclaimed, immediately concerned. "What happened? How did you get here?"
"I took the bus," she replied through sobs. "I memorized the way during our visits." Reed gently guided her inside, sitting her down on the sofa. "Do your parents know you're here?" Lily shook her head. "They didn't even notice I left. They're too busy yelling at each other." Reed felt a pang in his chest. Despite the financial help and the conditions he had established, Adrian and Veronica's marital problems appeared to have worsened instead of improved. "They're talking about divorce," Lily continued, her words rushing out in a torrent of anguish. "Mom said she wants to go back to Chicago, where her family lives. That means I would have to go too, and I'd be away from Dad and away from you, Grandpa." Reed hugged his granddaughter, letting her cry on his shoulder while he stroked her hair. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry you're going through this." "Why do adults always mess everything up?" Lily asked with the painful wisdom that only children can have in moments of crisis. Reed didn't have a simple answer. Instead, he prepared hot chocolate, the comforting drink he always made for Lily when she was younger, and they sat at the kitchen table, their hands wrapped around the steaming mugs. "Sometimes, Lily, people who love each other find out they can't live together anymore," Reed explained carefully. "It doesn't mean they love you any less." "But why can't they just solve their problems? You always say problems are like puzzles, difficult sometimes, but they have solutions if you try hard enough." Reed smiled sadly. "Relationships are much more complicated puzzles, my dear. Not every piece is always there." At that moment, Reed's phone rang. It was Adrian, his voice shaky with panic. "Dad, Lily is missing. She didn't come back from school and no one has seen her." "Calm down, Adrian. Lily is with me," Reed said, looking at his granddaughter who was nervously biting her lip. "She took the bus and came here." The audible sigh of relief from the other end of the line was palpable. "Thank God, I'll come get her right now." "Actually," Reed hesitated, an idea forming in his mind, "I suggest you let Lily spend the night here. It seems you both need some time to talk without her around." There was a pause. "Veronica is furious." "With you or with Lily?" "With everyone, to be honest," Adrian admitted, lowering his voice. "Things aren't good, Dad. I think we've reached the end of the line." Reed looked at Lily, who was distractedly playing with the spoon in her mug. "Son, you both need to have a serious conversation without worrying about Lily hearing everything. She'll be safe with me tonight, and tomorrow we can talk, all together, like adults." After a few more exchanges, Adrian agreed. Reed promised to call later and hung up the phone. "So," he said, turning back to Lily with an encouraging smile, "it looks like we'll have a grandpa and granddaughter night. How about we make homemade pizza and watch a movie?" The girl's eyes lit up slightly. "Can we make the stuffed crust pizza like Grandma Evelyn used to?" "Exactly like she used to," Reed confirmed, feeling a wave of nostalgia and gratitude for being able to share these memories with his granddaughter. As they prepared the dough, toppings, and sauce, Reed watched Lily. At 11 years old, she was already showing traces of Evelyn's determination and the keen intelligence of several generations of the Holloway family. He also noticed her fragility, the way her shoulders slightly slumped, as if carrying an invisible weight. "You know," Reed said casually while spreading the sauce, "when I was about your age, my parents also went through tough times." Lily looked up, surprised. "Really? Did great-grandma and great-grandpa almost get divorced?" "They came close," Reed confirmed. "My dad lost his job, and the bills started piling up. They argued constantly, and I hid in my room, thinking it was somehow my fault." "That's exactly how I feel," Lily whispered. Reed wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "But it wasn't my fault, just like it's not your fault now. Adults sometimes lose their way, forget how to talk to each other, how to really listen." "And what happened to great-grandma and great-grandpa?" "They found their way back to each other, but it took time and a lot of effort. It doesn't always happen that way, Lily. Sometimes people who love each other find out they're happier following separate paths." "And if Mom really takes me to Chicago?" Lily's voice trembled. Reed took a deep breath. If that happens, we'll find a way. There are planes, trains, cars, and I'm not exactly poor, you know." He winked, trying to lighten the moment. "I can visit Chicago frequently. They say they have excellent pizza there, although I doubt it's better than ours." That night, after Lily finally fell asleep in the guest room, which Reed secretly called Lily's room since he had decorated it especially for her, he sat on the porch, contemplating the stars. His phone rang again. "Dad?" Adrian's voice was hoarse, as if he had been crying. "Can we talk?" Sunday morning dawned clear and bright in Ocean Beach. Reed woke up early, as usual, and prepared a breakfast tray for Lily. Animal-shaped pancakes, a technique he had perfected in recent weeks, inspired by a cooking show they watched together. While his granddaughter was still asleep, Reed tidied up the small living room, preparing it for the important conversation that would take place soon. Adrian and Veronica would arrive shortly, and he wanted to create a neutral and welcoming environment for everyone. The day before, after Adrian's late-night call, Reed had suggested something that surprised even him: that Lily stay in his bungalow for a few weeks, giving the couple space to work on their issues or, if necessary, plan a separation in the least traumatic way possible for their daughter. "Good morning, Grandpa," said Lily, entering the living room still in her borrowed pajamas, a worn-out Reed t-shirt that reached almost to her knees. "You made giraffe pancakes." "And an elephant and a lion, too," Reed smiled, placing the tray on the table. "I thought we could have breakfast on the porch today. The sea looks especially blue this morning." As they ate, Reed noticed how Lily seemed more relaxed. The weight of recent months temporarily lifted from her small shoulders. Here, far from the domestic tensions, she was becoming just a child again, curious, joyful, imaginative. "Your parents are coming to see you today," Reed gently said when they finished eating. Lily immediately tensed. "Are they going to fight again?" "I hope not. Actually, I have an idea I want to share with all of you." Before he could elaborate, the sound of a car parking announced the arrival of Adrian and Veronica. To Reed's surprise, they entered together without the evident hostility of previous encounters. "Lily!" Veronica rushed over to hug her daughter, tears in her eyes. "Don't ever scare us like that again." Reed noticed that Veronica seemed different, less polished, more authentic. Her usually immaculate hair was pulled into a casual ponytail, and she wore simple jeans instead of the elegant suits she preferred. "I'm sorry, Mom," Lily murmured, hesitantly returning the hug. The Adrian approached, joining the family embrace. "We were so worried, Princess." Reed offered coffee to everyone, and then, when they were settled in the living room, Lily between her parents on the sofa and he in the chair facing them, he laid out his proposal. "Lily told me about the possibility of you two separating and about Chicago," he began, noticing how Veronica and Adrian exchanged uncomfortable glances. "I'm not here to judge or interfere in your decision as a couple, but I'm concerned about Lily and the impact this will have on her." "We are too," Veronica said, surprisingly softly. "That's why, well, we decided to try couples therapy." Reed raised his eyebrows, genuinely surprised. "That's great news." "It was Veronica's idea, actually," Adrian admitted. "After Lily ran away yesterday, we realized how much our problems were affecting her." "I didn't want to be like my own parents," Veronica added, a vulnerability in her voice Reed had never witnessed before. "They divorced when I was Lily's age and used me as a weapon against each other for years. I promised myself I would never do that to my own child." Reed felt a wave of respect for his daughter-in-law, a feeling he rarely experienced in recent years. "I'm proud of you both for taking that step," he said sincerely. "But," Adrian continued, "the process won't be easy or quick. We have many issues to resolve: financial, emotional, communication, and we still don't know if we can save our marriage." It was at this moment that Reed shared his idea. "What do you think about Lily spending more time here with me while you work on these issues? Not permanently, of course, but maybe a few weeks at a time, or on weekends." "Like shared custody with Grandpa?" Veronica asked, furrowing her brow. More like a neutral refuge, Reed explained, a place where Lily can simply be a child without the weight of your tensions. She would continue at the same school, keep her routine, but have a space to breathe when things get tough at home. Lily, who had remained silent, suddenly perked up. "Could I have my own room here, like a second home?" Reed smiled. "You already have your own room, dear. I decorated it especially for you." Adrian and Veronica exchanged glances, silently communicating as couples do, a reminder that, despite everything, they still shared a connection. "Can we see the room?" Veronica cautiously asked. Reed led them down the hallway to the second bedroom, which he had transformed with soft aqua green walls, Lily's favorite color, a comfortable bed with a comforter patterned with constellations, a desk for studying, and shelves already partially filled with books he knew she would like. "Oh, Grandpa," Lily whispered, her eyes shining with excitement, "it's perfect." To everyone's surprise, Veronica had tears in her eyes. "You did this for her even without knowing if we would allow her to stay?" Reed shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "Let's just say I'm an optimist." After more discussions, adjustments, and negotiations, they reached an agreement. Lily would spend 3 nights a week with Reed, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, allowing Adrian and Veronica to have their therapy sessions and the space needed to work on their relationship without exposing their daughter to the inevitable tensions of the process. As the family finally prepared to leave, Lily, now with a small set of clothes and belongings that would permanently stay in the bungalow, Reed pulled Adrian aside. "Son, be honest with me. Do you really believe you can save this marriage, or are you just postponing the inevitable?" Adrian looked at Veronica, who was helping Lily organize her books on the shelf. "Honestly, I don't know. But for the first time in years, we're really talking, Dad. Not just about bills or appearances or status. We're talking about feelings, fears, dreams. Whatever the outcome, I think we're finally being honest with each other." Reed squeezed his son's shoulder. "Sometimes that's the most important thing." As they said their goodbyes, Reed was surprised when Veronica approached and hugged him briefly. "Thank you," she murmured, "for being the father I wish I had." 2 hours later, Reed and Lily walked barefoot along the sandy beach, the last rays of the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The low tide had left small pools where tiny fish and crabs sought refuge. "Grandpa," said Lily, as they sat on a large flat rock to watch the horizon, "do you think Mom and Dad will really get divorced?" Reed passed his arm around her shoulders. "I don't know, dear. They're trying to find their way back to each other again, but sometimes, even with a lot of love and effort, people find they're happier following separate paths." "Are you happy living alone?" she asked, her big eyes fixed on his. Reed reflected for a moment, watching the waves gently break on the sand. "Yes," he finally replied. "I'm happy because here I can be myself. I'm not trying to fit into someone else's life or their expectations. I'm living my own life on my own terms." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "That's how I feel at your house. Like I can just be myself without worrying if I'm being too loud or too quiet or too anything." Reed felt his heart fill with an emotion he couldn't name, something between joy, gratitude, and a deep sense of renewed purpose. "Grandpa," Lily continued, her voice small against the sound of the waves, "what if they really do get divorced? What if I have to choose between living with Mom or Dad?" "No matter what happens," Reed replied firmly, "we'll face it together. And remember, you will always have both parents in your life, and you will always have me." As the last ray of sun disappeared over the horizon, Reed looked at his granddaughter, this little human who carried the future of their family, and felt a deep certainty that regardless of the challenges to come, they had found a path to dignity, respect, and true love that transcends conventions. "Look," Lily pointed, indicating the first star of the night appearing in the still bright sky. "Grandma Evelyn used to say the first star of the night is special." "She did say that," Reed smiled, recalling how Evelyn loved to tell stories about the stars.
She said it was a reminder that even on the darkest nights, light always finds a way. "I think we're finding our way, aren't we, Grandpa?" Lily asked, resting her head on his shoulder. "Yes, my dear," Reed replied, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. "We are definitely finding our way." Final call to action. This was the story of Reed Holloway, a man who reminds us that it's never too late to start over, and that true dignity lies in living authentically. If this narrative touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share your thoughts in the comments. After all, as Reed discovered, the most important stories are the ones we continue to tell together.